Well, there's no stopping you, is there? Now Kane wants you to destroy this village. It's the last front standing between him and his Tiberium operations. There are some civilians there, but they're sick and dying, so you should be able to handle them quite easily. And don't worry about any GDI forces. Intelligence tells me there are just a few scientists lurking about.
As you can imagine, we are making major progress through the Nod campaign, and we're on to another mission that has an interesting objective. So, instead of having to destroy the GDI base as normal, we once again find ourselves having to destroy a village. It's well known that the initial campaign starts to really make you question the ethics of the Nod faction by having you commit various acts that are akin to terrorism. Now, you'll notice from what I said way back in Mission 5 about GDI airstrikes, we are in fact in the top left corner of the map, and that will have some interesting attributes. You'll see in the way I build my base that I'm leaving a gap, and that gap will be to stick a unit in. And that unit will serve as airstrike fodder. You want to be very careful about what you build and where you build it, because otherwise you just lose a lot of value in your structures. And that all comes down to GDI airstrikes. It's completely free, and there's no real way to stop GDI having an airstrike in the single player campaign. So we're just going to use the buggies to scout out the map. This is probably the longest Brotherhood of Nod mission that you've seen in a while. Especially after that last mission, which we all know how quickly that ended up being finished. Interesting attribute is when a unit drops below 50% HP and starts smoking like that, it actually has a reduced movement speed. So these buggies are now slower than they would normally be.
Unit lost. New construction options. Building construction complete. New construction options.
All that remains is to tech up, as we would say. Get the tank to do its job in crushing a bunch of infantry so that it becomes a very cost-effective unit.
Reinforcements have arrived. Our base is under attack.
The Grenadiers are absolutely just going to target things, what the AI believes is key structures, which is going to be your refineries more often than not. As you can see, it will do that to the detriment of its own quote-unquote well-being. It doesn't really acknowledge having to go through a large portion of your base. And to reach your refinery, it just really wants your refinery to put the strain on your economy. And they'll do that with your harvesters as well in later missions. They'll always prioritize. Well, they'll prioritize very similar things to what you will. They just do it in a much less intelligent way than a player would. Of course, it goes as no secret, I'm very excited for the CNC remaster to see if they do make the AI more intelligent, and to see whether some of these levels will be as quickly beatable as they used to be. Or if we're going to be in a position where we are forced to change some of these age-old tactics that have always worked. That was a value Grenadier, managing to do whatever he could. So, you've seen this tactic before. The tactic hasn't changed. We're spamming tank. And we're spamming tank because tanks are great. Now, the GDI base is reasonably large, and it has quite good production capability. It also has safe Tiberium, so it's very hard to starve the base of resources. Our plan is going to rush the base, cripple it a little, and then just destroy the village without finishing off GDI. How you do this mission is entirely up to you, but I find, for what the mission is actually about, wasting time with the GDI base just elongates the length of the mission. Which you could have a lot of fun with, but I wanted to get the mission done reasonably quickly. So you can sort of see where the GDI base is now. This path helps telegraph the location of the base, and you can see the units coming from it. We're now going to head northwards, and the reason we're heading northwards is to clean up these additional tanks. All of these units scattered around the map will make things harder for your own troops once you start attacking the GDI base. So it's important to go through this stage of just clearing up the map a little bit, so that you don't get flanked or outmaneuvered in a particular way.
Our base is under attack. Reinforcements have arrived.
Affirmative, sir. Yes, moving out. Moving out. Unit moving out. Moving out.
So, we're now starting to build a critical mass of tanks,
Yes, sir.
and we'll be able to use this to attack the GDI base.
Moving out. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
But what you'll see
Acknowledge. Yes, sir.
is that tanks, when left alone
Moving out.
and used alone, they're actually really, really poor.
Reinforcements have
And
arrived.
something that becomes more common in the Red Alert series, but also in the rebalance patches
Reinforcements
that were done as
have
part of
arrived.
OpenRA.
Acknowledge.
The idea, what they always envisioned, was that you would use tanks as a front line and play the game a lot with infantry. Which is why you see a lot of these style of attacks out of GDI.
Construction
And not. The idea is that you could build infantry cheap, and because there was no unit limit, you could build them cheap and en masse. And only have a couple of tanks just to, soak damage. What actually happened with the original release of the game is it just became a tank meta. You just built as many tanks as possible, and whoever had more tanks won. And Command & Conquer is not in that state anymore if you're playing OpenRA. OpenRA, the artillery are much more useful, and you want to be playing a lot more creatively. The tech path has also been amended, and infantry absolutely have their place in the game now.
Yes, sir.
Unit lost.
So, you won't hear very many sound effects over the sound of tanks shooting.
Moving out.
Unit lost.
And all we're going to do is we're just going to try to push into the GDI base. And our intent is to do some really crippling damage.
Moving out. Acknowledge.
Unit lost. Construction complete.
Yes, sir.
Unit lost. Unit lost.
So as you can already see,
Have arrived.
GDI have a lot of tanks. And that makes attacking into the base very, very difficult.
Waiting order. Acknowledge.
What I wanted to do was take out the ability to produce infantry, because they are the strongest answer to tanks, and then take out the construction yards so that they don't rebuild their barracks.
Unit lost.
Fortunately, the AI could have stopped me there, but it makes an unintelligent move, and that allows me to get some more tanks into the GDI base,
Construction complete.
and also finish off their construction yard.
Reinforcements have arrived.
You may notice we have run out of resources,
Our base is
and our
under
harvesters are
attack.
now stuck. You have to be careful with this. The map is not always its most intelligent, nor is the pathfinding for the harvesters.
Unit lost.
You can get some very interesting queries as to why your economy has dried up.
Building.
But with the AI making most unintelligent moves, we can actually cripple the GDI base a lot more than I was originally intending to. Because it is not pursuing me, but is in fact trying to launch a counterattack.
Unit acknowledge. Unit
So although I don't have many tanks left, the GDI have no ability to produce anymore. And so the small amount of tanks that I do have remaining, I can now just mobilize
acknowledge.
really, really easily. And that's more or less going to seal the deal with this mission for us. We have to remember the objective is not to kill GDI on this map, but instead to destroy the village that they are currently protecting.
Acknowledge.
This is the second time we've had to destroy a village as part of the Brotherhood of Nod missions. And technically, if you count mission 1, it's the third time that killing civilians has been our objective. This sort of trend continues way into all sorts of missions. In the PSX bonus missions for Nod, there was yet another mission that involves destroying villages. They really played up to the element of terrorism. So, what counts as a destroyed village changes all the time. between missions, so you may see me ignoring buildings, and it's because it wants the civilians to be killed. It's the civilians that have to die for this village to be classed as destroyed.
Moving out. Moving out. Moving out.
Always destroy the church. Most of the time there's hidden money in there. That is not a politically charged commentary. It's a running gimmick that persists from the original Command and Conquer into Red Alert, is that the church will always contain chests of money, except for the church doesn't always contain a chest of money.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, yes. Wait, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Unit acknowledged. Waiting order. Acknowledged.
So all we're doing is just leveling the village.
Waiting. Affirmative.
We're sneaking in a couple of engineers. The engineers are to help us with our production. I'm letting the harvester in because it's my plan to actually capture the harvester,
Ready and waiting.
just for the extra eco boost.
Reporting. Moving in.
Unit ready. GDI building captured.
Yes, sir.
GDI building captured. Building. Our base is under attack.
Moving out.
Construction complete.
Affirmative. Unit report. Affirmative. Affirmative.
So, throwing down a hand of nod just so I can have some fun and capture elements of GDI base, but as you saw, the last
Primary
civilian
target
died.
selected.
That ends the mission.
Yes, sir.
Mission accomplished.